Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/BrianEDenton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on chapter 209. From Gorky, Bennigsen descended the high road to the bridge, which, when they had looked at it from the hill, the officer had pointed out as being the center of our position, and where rows of fragrant new-mown lawn lay by the riverside. They rode across the bridge to the village of Borodino, and thence turned to the left, passing an enormous number of troops and guns, and came to a high knoll where militiamen were digging. This was the redoubt, as yet unnamed, which afterwards became known as the Revesky redoubt, or the Knoll Battery, but Pierre paid no special attention to it. He did not know that it would become more memorable to him than any other spot on the plain of Borodino. They then crossed the hollow to Semenovsk, where the soldiers were dragging away the last logs from the huts and barns. Then they rode downhill and uphill across a rye field trodden and beaten down as if by hail, following a track freshly made by the artillery over the furrows of the plowed land, and reached some fletches which were still being dug. At the fletches, Bennigsen stopped and began looking at the Shevardino redoubt opposite, which had been ours the day before, and where several horsemen could be descried. The officers said that either Napoleon or Murat was there, and they all gazed eagerly at this little group of horsemen. Pierre also looked at them, trying to guess which of the scarcely discernible figures was Napoleon. At last those mounted men rode away from the mount and disappeared. Bennigsen spoke to a general who approached him, and began explaining the whole position of our troops. Pierre listened to him, straining each faculty to understand the essential points of the impending battle, but was mortified to feel that his mental capacity was inadequate for the task. He could make nothing of it. Bennigsen stopped speaking, and, noticing that Pierre was listening, suddenly said to him, "I don't think this interests you?" "Oh, on the contrary, it's very interesting," replied Pierre, not quite truthfully. From the fletches they rode still farther to the left, along a road winding through a thick, low-growing birch wood. In the middle of the wood, a brown hare with white feet sprang about, and scared by the tramp of the many horses, grew so confused that it leaped along the road in front of them for some time, arousing general attention and laughter, and only when several voices shouted at it did it dart to one side and disappear into the thicket. After going through the wood for about a mile and a half, they came out on a glade where troops of Tuchkov's corps were stationed to defend the left flank. Here, at the extreme left flank, Bennigsen talked a great deal and with much heat, and, as it seemed to Pierre, gave orders of great military importance. In front of Tuchkov's troops was some high ground not occupied by troops. Bennigsen loudly criticized this mistake, saying it was madness to leave a height which commanded the country around unoccupied and to place troops below it. Some of the generals expressed the same opinion. One in particular declared with martial heat that they were put there to be slaughtered. Bennigsen on his own authority ordered the troops to occupy the high ground. This disposition on the left flank increased Pierre's doubt of his own capacity to understand military matters. Listening to Bennigsen and the generals criticizing the position of the troops behind the hill, he quite understood them and shared their opinion. But for that very reason he could not understand how the man who put them behind the hill could have made so gross and palpable a blunder. Pierre did not know that these troops were not, as Bennigsen supposed, put there to defend the position, but were in a concealed position as an ambush, that they should not be seen and might be able to strike an approaching enemy unexpectedly. Bennigsen did not know this, and moved the troops forward according to his own ideas, without mentioning the matter to the commander-in-chief. Uh-oh. All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 209. I hope you enjoyed it. A little cliffhanger there at the end. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, Day 209. Acci vivere Lucili, militare est. One Roman, Lucilius, once wrote to another Roman, Seneca, in order to complain about sickness. Lucilius chafed under the fact that he had recently been struck ill by a bladder infection. He worried about the damage it would do to his body. He wrote to his friend that he hoped, more than anything, for health and a long life. Seneca, ever the stern Stoic, doesn't disappoint in his response. He gently chastises his friend for his complaining. Hardships, such as sickness, Seneca wrote, are to be expected. In fact, the struggle against hardship is a defining characteristic of our existence on earth. Life, Lucilius, Seneca reminded his friend, is really a battle. I'm reminded of this exchange whenever I read today's chapter, as Pierre attends Bennigsen's examination of the Russian position before the Battle of Borodino. Of course, we have the battle theme parallel between both Seneca's letter and Tolstoy's chapter, but there's also a deeper correspondence. I've always read the letters of Seneca and Lucilius as two minds attempting to make sense of a senseless world. Remember that Tolstoy wrote previously in our book that war is an event opposed to all human reason. War, in other words, is senseless. I see Seneca and Lucilius in Pierre Bezukhov as he attempts to understand Bennigsen in the general's discussion about the battle plan. Quote, Pierre listened to him, straining each faculty to understand the essential points of the impending battle, but was mortified to feel that his mental capacity was inadequate for the task. He could make nothing of it. End quote. Pierre is a smart man, highly educated, yet he cannot make sense of what the two generals discuss. Pierre's incomprehension of the battle of life, is later reflected in the bewildered and skittish sprinting about of the rabbit along the roadside. Quote, in the middle of the wood, a brown hare with white feet sprang out, and, scared by the tramp of the many horses, grew so confused that it leapt along the road in front of them for some time, arousing general attention and laughter, and only when several voices shouted at it did it dart to one side and disappear into the thicket. End quote. Lucilius and Seneca and Pierre and the rabbit and us, forever fumbling about in the battle of life. Daily Meditation. The most perfect philosophy of the natural kind only staves off our ignorance a little longer, as perhaps the most perfect philosophy of the moral and metaphysical kind serves only to discover larger portions of it. Thus, the observation of human blindness and weakness is the result of all philosophy, and meets us at every turn, in spite of our endeavors to elude or avoid it. David Hume, An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding. All right, that concludes my reading of and reflection on chapter 209. My boy Hume makes an appearance. Gotta love it. Thanks so much for joining me. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation to PayPal. The links to all that are down below in the show notes. Tomorrow, we will be reading and reflecting on chapter 210. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.